Katipunan 87.9 FM. Palalimin ang kamalayan sa mga isyong napapanahon. Makisangkot at makiisa kasama ang simbahang lingkod ng bayan. Ang Social-Political Apostolate ng Kapisanan ni Jesus. Ito ang Kwentuhang Bayan mula alas 11 ng umaga tuwing Biyernes dito lang sa Radyo Katipunan 87.9 FM. Dahil naniniwala kami na posible ang isang mas mabuting lipunan at maaari itong simulan sa isang kwentuhan.
Lamig, init, ulan, hangin, kumakalingang kalikasan. Ating alagaan at ingatan. Kumusta na ang ating kalikasan? Pag-usapan natin ang kalagayan ng mundo at kung paano tayo makatutulong sa pagkalinga sa ating tahanan. Kasama sina Father J.M. Manzano ng Kapisanan ni Jesus at si Dr. Abelcio V. Pilton. Ito ang Tatak Kalikasan sa Radyo Katipunan 87.9 FM.
Oh! AdMU! Fight! AdMU! Fight! Ready! 1, 2, fight! A! Fight D! Fight E! Fight S! Fight E! Fight O! Fight blue and white! The blue and white will go and fight! Fight sis! Boom ba! Boom ra 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 ra! Boom ra 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 ra! Boom ra 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 ra! Fight A! Fight D! Fight E! Fight S! Fight E! Fight O! Go! Go! AdMU!
Follow at Radyo Katipunan in our social media accounts on Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter.
Susunod na ang Baka Naman Pwede sa Radyo Katipunan 87.9 FM.
Radyo Katipunan. News, insights, inspiration. Radyo Katipunan. Down from the hill and down to the world. Radyo Katipunan. The voice of the Blue Eagle.
Radyo, 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 Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan, radyo, 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 Katipunan, radyo, radyo, Katipunan. Voice of the Blue Eagle, kami di mapipigil sa pagbabalitang tumpak at tama. Buhay at tenista, sa loob sa labas ng eskwela, ating ibibida lahat ng eskwela. Radyo, 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 Katipunan, radyo, 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 Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan. Kawal ni Ignacio, Katipunero sugod, todo sa kayon, tulong at tulong. Lipat na Blue Eagle, galing giting nagigil. Blue and white, one big fight. Radyo, 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 Katipunan, radyo, 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 Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan, radyo, 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 Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan.
Baka naman pwede.
Baka naman pwede?
Baka naman pwede. Mga isyung napapanahon ating pag-usapan. Baka naman pwede. Gamit ang mga pananaw mula sa iba't ibang kalinangan.
Baka naman pwede.
Mula sa Institute of Philippine Culture, kami inyong samahan. Tayo'y maghuntahan. Dito lang sa
Baka naman pwede.
Tuwing Huwebes, alas 3 ng hapon, dito lang sa Radyo Katipunan 87.9 FM.
Magandang hapon sa lahat. Nakikinig kayo ngayon sa Baka Naman Pwede, isang programa ng Institute of Philippine Culture at ng Radyo Katipunan na naglalayong pagnilayan ang mga napapanahong issue gamit ang lente ng agham panlipunan o social sciences. Nais din nating mapagkwentuhan ang mga bagay na baka naman pwede nating tingnang muli, pag-ukulan ng pansin at aksyonan. Ako si Skilty Labastilla ng Department of Interdisciplinary Studies at ng Institute of Philippine Culture At ako ang magiging host sa hapong ito. Sa nakaraang live episode, nagkaroon tayo ng pagkakataon na makapanayam ang ilan sa mga kasalukuyang interns ng IPC. Nakasama natin sina Cristel Buergo, John Rovic Katangay, Doms Cordero, John Magnifico at Rian Piamonte, at dinala tayo sa isang masayang huntahan ukol sa kanilang karanasan sa internship program ng IPC. Nilahad nila ang kanilang mga dahilan kung bakit sila nag-apply sa internship na ito at kwento nila ang mga motibasyon at karanasan sa pag-apply. Napagkwentuhan din nila ang kung paano lumawak ang kanilang pananaw sa pananaliksik sa agham panlipunan bilang mga interns ng IPC. Nagbahagi sila ng mga insights tungkol sa work culture ng IPC at ibinahagi ang mga masasayang moments kasama ang mga tao sa IPC at sa mga kapwa nilang mga intern. Binahagi rin nila ang mga natutunan mula sa mga learning sessions na inorganisa ng IPC. Bagamat mayroon na silang mga kaalaman sa ilang mga paksang tinalakay, mas napalalim nila ang kanilang pag-unawa at appreciation sa iba't ibang aspekto ng pananaliksik. Sa pangwakas, hinikayat nila ang mga mag-aaral sa mga disiplina ng agham panlipunan na subukan din na mag-apply sa internship ng IPC. Para po sa mga gustong balikan ang mga nakaraang episodes ng Baka Naman Pwede, mangyari lamang na bisitahin ang Facebook page ng Institute of Philippine Culture at ng Radyo Katipunan. Ngayong hapon po, makakasama natin si Dr. Caterina Lorenzo-Molo mula sa University of Asia and the Pacific to delve into corporate social responsibility as well as the Senate Bill 2355, yung CSR bill. We're hybrid today because Prof. Caterina is joining us online, and right now I'm here in the studio of Radyo Katipunan. Sa mga manonood natin sa Facebook, pwede kayong sumali sa aming kwentuhan. Mangyari lamang na i-type ang inyong mga komento at katanungan sa comment section at babasahin namin ang mga ito sa ating Q&A portion mamaya. Alright, to start this episode, let me introduce our guest for today's episode. Dr. Caterina Lorenzo-Molo is an assistant professor in the School of Communication, University of Asia and the Pacific. She explores and examines media messages with an Austrian economics lens premised on natural law and human action. She has published articles for the Journal of Business Ethics, the Asian Journal of Business Ethics, Public Relations Review, Asian Business and Management, and Media Asia. Beyond the peer review, she has been published in a traditional Catholic site known as 1 Peter 5 and the technology site Hacker Noon, articles ranging from topics on Russia and Vatican II to Bitcoin and money. To our listeners and viewers, let us give a virtual round of applause to Dr. Caterina Lorenzo-Molo. Welcome to Baka Naman Pwede, Prof. Caterina.
Hello.
Hi.
Good afternoon. Hi.
Nice to finally meet you.
Likewise.
Just as a background, after I've learned of this bill in the Senate, I thought of someone to talk to who's familiar about CSR. So I searched the internet and I found the name of Prof. Caterina Lorenzo-Molo because she actually wrote an article, a peer-reviewed article on CSR. So we're very happy that she's joining us for this afternoon. So to kick off this conversation, Prof. Caterina, I just want to ask you, what are you busy these days? What keeps you busy?
Well, actually, I'm still doing research. I have to admit, though, I wrote. I wonder which paper you are referring to.
Yeah, I think that was 2009, if not mistaken.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, that was this first one.
Oh.
I have another one, not specifically on the Philippines general CSR, but it's been a while since I got published in CSR. So lately, I've been doing mostly marketing and church issues.
Right.
So my specialty now is reading media texts, like analyzing media framing of information.
Interesting. Yeah, but I'm sure even if you've written on CSR a couple of years back, you've been following for sure some of the
Well,
updates.
it's very similar to marketing, and the principles
Yeah.
are the same. There are similarities, but I had to read the bill. Actually, to be honest, I wasn't familiar with I
Yeah,
didn't know such a bill was being passed, so I read it, and yeah, so I can give my opinion
for
as
sure.
to what I think. Yes.
All right. So let's start with CSR. Now, for listeners who are not familiar with corporate social responsibility, maybe Prof. Caterina can start with a definition of what this means.
Okay, let me from my paper. There are various definitions, really, but the most cited definition is from a lady named Carol. Sorry, was she a lady? Carol's definition, let me look for it. So it's really just corporations proclaiming to set aside a certain amount. That's a popular definition. Corporations proclaiming to set aside a certain amount for, shall we call them, do-gooder activities. That's one definition. But of course, in my paper, I discuss like issues and about pertaining to that definition. Would you also like a history? A
Yes,
history
please.
of
That would
CSR?
further elucidate our listeners on this topic.
Okay, so yes, well, they say CSR is important to business. So yes, like I said, there are many angles. But I think the latest, like I said, in when you read earlier, like what kind of research I do now, and you read that I try to look at reality with an Austrian lens. That would be Austrian economics. So just to explain a bit what Austrian economics is, it's a mode of economic thinking that is partial to the free market. So it's a school of thought that champions small government. And so ever since I discovered Austrian economics, my view of anything marketing or CSR has been small government. And so I would define CSR as really very simple. A corporation determining, acknowledging, and accepting its purpose and responsibilities. So that's really very straightforward and very simple. A bit of history, though. So historically, corporations were creatures of state-granted monopoly privileges. So the earliest, shall we say, sort of CSR I found would be with in the 1600s when Queen Elizabeth I chartered the British East India Company with a monopoly in trade to the East Indies. Yeah. So, but as the years went by, it became, how shall we put it, a bit more democratic. It became a bit more, the permission to set up a corporation became just paperwork.
Right.
So long as you meet basic requirements, then you'd get it. And, but actual CSR, what do you call it? Formal CSR as a discipline, authors say, began in 1946 when Fortune magazine conducted a survey and defined it as businessmen being responsible for the consequences of their actions in a sphere somewhat wider than that covered by their profit and loss statement. So it was egging corporations to do more.
Right.
So okay, you're making money, but come on, you've reaped profits, give back. That became the, shall we say, the mantra. So, and then things happened like the 60s. it's a crazy decade. People complained about consumerism. People started complaining about big business. And of course, corporations started to, okay, let's do more. We've been rewarded. Let's do more. And one thing led to another. Now, it's I think now if you do certain things, there's tax deductible for if you do this much. There are incentives now for corporations to do these do-gooder activities.
Right.
So that would be the history.
Yeah. So in even in the 1940s, was this already existing also in our part of the world, or is it
No,
more
not
of
in the Philippines yet.
Okay.
In the Philippines, it started with um, Joe Carpio and the people from the PRSP
Right. PRSP.
and the Philippine Social, what are they called? It's in my article.
Or
There's this
is it
group.
PBSP or Philippine Business for Social Progress? Is that
Yes,
it?
correct.
All right.
Those groups were the first. I mean, these things, there's not like an official, CSR started in this
Yeah.
day, because it's organic, and so we could just spit it to like a range, more or less, at that time. So in the Philippines, it largely began as philanthropy,
Right.
and actually even up to like early 2000s, it was still philanthropy. I think only lately has it what is the proper word? Has it like evolved to other things?
Right.
But yeah,
So
so it's gotten bigger.
right. Can you cite a specific example of the philanthropy that was being done in the PBSP days, the early days of PBSP?
Oh, well, it was really they got corporations together to promise, to vow that okay, if we make this much, and then a certain portion we would do for these do-gooder activities. What's so popular in the Philippines are foundations,
Okay.
and then giving money to institutions like museums, schools, things like that, and then also like community projects.
Right, right. So it can be direct intervention to communities or through intermediary institutions, right?
Right.
Donations to.
But I think it has evolved to like the government will give you, the government incentivizes it by, I mean, charity is tax deductible.
Right.
So because they made it tax deductible, corporations want to do this. Yeah.
Yeah.
So because also from a strategic marketing perspective, it's advertising for them.
Yes, for sure. So when you say tax deductible, how does this go? So this needs transparency, right? Because
Yeah, I think they report these things.
All right.
They're probably in the annual report. I don't know the details, but they should be there.
Right, right. Okay. So once the government sees that a specific corporation is doing CSR, then they don't need to pay the normal
Well, not that they
amount.
don't need to pay. I think, there are ranges. Let's say I'm not familiar with the details, but there are like ranges. Like you can, it's like presenting receipts. And so you're taxed this much. And so if you're able to present like you spent this much for this thing,
Right,
then the computation of your annual tax is less.
right.
But like I
right.
said, I'm not familiar with the nitty-gritties of the
Yeah,
details. I think lawyers would know this
for
more.
sure. No worries.
I just know the general idea in principle.
Right. In your literature search, Prof. Caterina, have you come across some of the criticisms against this practice of making corporations getting away with with fewer tax just because they do CSR?
Yeah, yes, actually, from a first principles perspective, my view now is because of Austrian economics.
Right.
How shall I put it? Okay, first it's redundant.
Mm,
Because I was reading the bill. Let me open the bill
Sure.
you sent me. Hang on, where is that? Let's go straight to the bill because I think that's really
yes, yes, for
the
sure.
topic of this program. So let's go to the bill. on the first page. So it says here, it is no less than the Constitution that recognizes the indispensable role of the private sector in nation building. In fact, as aptly provided therein, the state encourages private enterprise and provides incentives to needed investments. I mean, it sounds nice, doesn't it?
Yeah, it
I mean,
does.
it's good because you incentivize business to do good things.
Hmm.
So you reward them. Okay, because you do something good, then, we'll tax you less.
Yeah.
That's really, I mean, essentially what this means.
Right.
So that's why I say, however, I find it inefficient. I understand why they're doing it, but I find it inefficient and redundant because instead of saying we'll tax you less, I think it's more efficient to just not regulate less or not even regulate, because it's precisely a lot of regulation that would make it difficult for business to do better, because you tax them, you regulate business, you tax business, and it gets in the way of doing the work.
Right.
So the thing is, if we understand the economy, if we understand human nature, businesses will not exist without clients and customers.
Okay.
And clients and customers will cease to patronize a business if it's bad. Of course, it's not perfect. It's not going to work perfectly because it's not a perfect world.
Right.
We have to accept, we are on earth. Imperfections come with human nature, right? We're not in heaven. We're on earth. And so we can't have a utopia on earth. There will always be problems.
Yeah.
But it's about allowing things to function with minimal to no regulation and intervention. And the system, I believe, works itself out. Because, for example, I don't know, the problem with corporations like saying, oh, we're going to give this much to do gooder activities. Let's say you are I don't know, give me a product.
Shampoo.
Yeah, shampoo. And then you're going to say, oh, we're going to clean up some river somewhere and feed these people here. Doing things that have nothing to do with shampoo.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be better if they instead focused on creating good shampoo?
Right.
Because they're doing all these other things. It's like spreading yourself too thinly. Why not focus? I mean, it's also like, right, when you produce products and goods, like normally, like, for example, if you're going to buy, like me, when I purchase appliances and gadgets, I always purchase from brands that had that gadget as their primary business versus they just opened up a new line. Because I would know that's not their specialty. I
Right.
would know that new line is extra.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like the same principle. Yeah, they can feed people and do all these larger than life things of that, seem so heroic, you're so great, you're helping people. But if you're not producing a good product,
Right.
if your shampoo is, you're scrimping on your customer, you're cheating it. I mean, I guess you know what I mean. I mean,
Yeah.
that's pseudo CSR. That's why in my paper I talk about the front stage and the backstage. The front stage is, it's like, well, I use like Greta Thunberg as an example. I mean, I know she's very popular,
Right.
but it's very easy. You're a child, you go out there and say, oh, how dare you? You got to do this and do that. It's very easy to proclaim. Our society today, we're very much into that. Like, I want to save the world. But at the core of that is the danger of being attention seeking and not really doing anything. Just focus. Why don't you focus on your work? An example I used to give to my students is, what if your mom is like a great philanthropist? She's always in ribbon cuttings, and you see her in the social pages of the newspapers, but then your mom is never home for dinner. So is your mom, I mean, being a responsible human being? No, because what is your mom's primary job? It's to be a mother. The other things are precisely other things. I'm not saying that she can't do other things. It's just that it follows the same principle of focusing on what your primary role really is.
Okay.
So
All right.
yeah.
So, is that what you mean when you wrote? I think it was the first article when you wrote about the myth of CSR. Was that what you were pertaining to?
Yes. Because if you're doing all these, it's very easy. The press release in the newspapers, and then they show, wow, this company is doing this and that. But I, as a customer, I wouldn't really care much about, them cleaning up some river somewhere. I mean, yeah, it would be nice, but I'd rather they focused on making sure, let's say, the food I'm buying is not poison.
Right. What do you think about this sort of criticism against CSR when I think it's related to what you're saying about some corporations being accused of greenwashing, the risks that they put the society in through their bad practices, but because they do good, then it washes away all the
Correct. Precisely.
Right.
That's what happens. You divert attention to the other things. So what happens? It becomes a points playing system, because advertising, marketing, these are very mesmerizing.
right.
It's very easy to just put glitter on yourself. But like I said, but precisely the system of the government incentivizing these things, in my opinion, I think it's not so effective. I would work more on no, because if I would work, I would lessen the regulation, because another thing is if you regulate business too much, you really favor big business there. Because big business, I'll give you an example, Amazon.com. I think a few years ago, I think it was during the pandemic or something, I do remember that Jeff Bezos supported increasing the minimum wage in the US. And of course, it sounds nice when you say we're going to increase the minimum wage. It sounds nice because who doesn't want to get more, right? I mean, it seems like it's such a kind thing to give higher wages to the blue collar worker. But if you really think about it, that really does not benefit the small person, because like a big company like Amazon, that's nothing for them. Because they're a big company, they can afford to meet the minimum wage. But if you're a small business, some entrepreneur, it's hard for you. Because precisely you're small.
Are there examples in other countries where those kinds of regulations are differentiated based on the size of the corporation?
No, it's like
So
across
it's
the board.
across the board.
When they increase it.
Right.
So what happens is small business dies. And that's why we have oligopolies and monopolies. These are the ones that benefit from these high minimum wage things, so the overregulation, because they don't have the manpower and the resources to keep up. And so they just die.
Wow.
Because it takes a lot. Like in the Philippines, why is our internet slow? That's also, because we don't have a lot of players.
Right.
And so there's so much regulation. It's a test to be able to enter. But for me, just allow anyone to enter, and they just, because it really, you as a customer, you just want to be served. And it's like that's your vote as a customer.
Mm.
I mean, you don't like it. So the businesses, they compete. So happens with an overly regulated system is the boss of industry are these few people who have been tasked to review the corporation, not us, the customer.
Mm.
So we don't get to vote with our opinion, like,
Right.
because the choices have been narrowed down for us. But like I said, it's not to say for a corporation, it's not sustainable to do bad. Maybe for a while, but at some point it crumbles. When there is no protector and anyone can put up anything, they will die.
Mm. Interesting. Uh, in the bill, are there specific sections that, or are you against the bill wholesale in principle?
Well, it's not. I wouldn't frame it that way. I wouldn't say I'm against the bill.
Right.
I'm just. I wish they would rethink, because,
Mm.
like I said, it's very easy. Benevolence. This thing of the idea of benevolence. Let's regulate goodness.
Mm.
It's very easy to say that, but again, we're human beings. All of us equally born with original sin. Nobody is, free. Nobody is free from error and evil.
Yeah.
And so, let me see. The bill seeks to encourage. Yeah, and they say, they put things here that they will assist. They will assist corporations,
Yeah.
businesses, and they will encourage. They will incentivize. I personally think it's inefficient. It is a waste of resources. Like, government could use its resources on other things, because the way the economy works and the way business is supposed to be, that there's a natural regulation in place, and that is the relationship between businesses producing goods and services and people who need them.
Mm.
So if the government enters and tries to regulate that, I think it's a waste of time, and it causes distortions in the system.
Right. Right.
And you're spending so much time and resources now when you don't need to, because it's a self-functioning system already. Like I said, business that doesn't do good is just naturally going to die. Like, I don't know, are you going to continue to patronize bad internet? If there were so many choices, right? Like, it's
Yeah.
bad today, okay, I'll change it tomorrow and the
Yeah.
next day. But if you don't really have many choices,
Yeah.
you're kind of stuck.
Yeah.
So during the pandemic, I think a lot of people felt that, because I won't mention the names of the companies, but it kind of didn't matter who you chose, because they were all the same.
Yeah. They're the same.
Because they were all connected to the same thing.
Right. I'm thinking, if you're in business and you read this bill, would it be something that you would welcome? I'm sure from your end, it's something that's
I think big business would like this.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah. The entrepreneur will not like this.
Right. Right.
The medium size, because it's very hard for them, because you're struggling.
Yes.
You're struggling. I think anyone who runs a small business, because we also have a family business, and I know how difficult it is to do government paperwork. But if
Right.
you're a big company, you have entire departments that do these things.
Mm. Right.
You have a whole. But if you're new, that's why these kinds of things, I know it does sound good on paper, but in practice, it's
Yeah.
just it marginalizes the small enterprise.
Yeah.
And then you'll say, oh, we give them microfinancing and all these things. Yeah, but then again, it's subject to approval of an elite group. And when you have an elite group deciding, I'm not saying that they are, but it opens. Are you familiar with the idea of the occasion of sin?
No. What is it?
Occasion of sin is like creating situations that make you do wrong.
Okay.
So if you have a system in place wherein you appoint an elite group to decide.
Yeah. Yeah.
You give that elite group power and authority.
Right.
And so, you know how it works. If that elite group have been given that power and authority,
Mm.
very easily, they can, they, they're, I mean, they're like us, human beings
Yes.
who can err.
Right. Right.
And we just gave that decision to them. So it's just like being in a classroom, right? You have a bunch of,
Mm.
the teacher will appoint, okay, all of you will have to pass through these five guys, and they decide on everything. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
power tripping is very easy
Yeah. Yeah.
in that situation. So, and you make large scale, whole nationwide, everyone applies through this system. When the way the economy works is this idea of buying and selling and producing goods and services, it works on its own. Like I said, you have the market decide.
Yeah.
A bad business will die a natural death. Bad businesses remain, if you really research into the details of it, bad businesses remain because they have protectors.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like I said, it sounds like, I mean, like the Greta Thunberg thing, like she says, like, oh, you know, we have to do this, buy electric cars and all that. You know, for example, the climate change advocacy. So now they want us to not use fossil fuels anymore. It sounds so nice. Like, me too. I don't like pollution. I don't like black air. I want fresh air. But sometimes we have to step on the brakes and look at the details of that. Is it so simplistic? Let's just all stop using coal. Let's just all buy electric cars. Let's just all use our bicycles. From a practical perspective, that is very difficult.
Right.
And then you will have someone say, oh, you're so lazy. That is so difficult. No, because it's not realistic. For example, people don't know that the pollution caused by, you know, your regular gas burning vehicle, pollution caused by that is a lot less than the pollution caused by electric cars. Do you know why?
Because electricity still comes from dirty.
No, it's the
source?
production of the electric car. The production of the electric car is so inefficient.
Right.
Because this is what you call the hidden cost. The production of the parts of the electric car, actually even solar and all these things,
Right.
they cause so much pollution that if you were to do a mathematical comparison of, and then there are studies in this, of the pollution yield of the regular vehicles, the gas burning vehicles, and the pollution and waste yield of all these renewable things, the latter still produces much more waste and pollution. So, you know, these are things that is very easy because you know what? Nobody wants bad air. I think everybody wants to, everyone wants to breathe cool air. But these days, if you say something like, if you try to like defend, you know, the gas vehicle, it's like, oh, you're so bad. You know, you don't want clean air. But it's not also as simple as that. Also, another thing is, we're a poor country. So the rich nations, they already got rich. So by embracing these policies that, you know, I call them the Greta Thunberg-like policies, we don't realize we marginalize ourselves. Because to be able to reach civilization level like the first world, we cannot on electric cars, and we will not be able to mathematically. It would be impossible. So from a larger scale, it's I'm just saying, I think sometimes you have to step on the brakes and think about the policies we are embracing, because we don't know that we could be hurting ourselves in the process.
Right.
Don't get me wrong, I love clean air. I mean, I love animals. I mean, I have cats. But there are hidden costs and trade-offs.
Right.
And we shouldn't easily be quick
Right.
to embrace something that only appears nice. Most of the time, they just appear nice. We have to be a bit more realistic.
Right. Prof. Caterina, what if, because right now the bill is on second reading, I think. What if it passes, it becomes a law? Are there still opportunities for the IRR, the internal rules and regulations, to be ironed out that would make this beneficial to society, you think?
I mean, it's not impossible.
Right,
I mean,
right.
they can. But realistically, given how human beings are,
Mm,
the temptation, it's just like the more you give a group of people, to try to govern other people,
mm,
uh, the danger of like corruption and injustice for me just increases. Again, I would much prefer a more natural. For me, what I would do is they should examine
right.
the way a situation is. Is there follow what is natural and organic? Does the system Can the system work on its own?
Right.
A good example is traffic. This is a
Mm.
favorite example of mine.
Yeah.
Generally people think that the reason why it's traffic is Filipinos are not disciplined.
Mm.
And so their answer will be, okay, we have to control the undisciplined Filipino. And so what do? We place more traffic lights, we place more traffic cops, we place barricades, we place more rules, no U-turn, no left turn, and we place all these cones.
Right.
And we try, okay, buses only here. But in my opinion, and I've studied this, let's put it this way, heavy traffic is directly proportional to the amount of controls and regulations you place.
Interesting.
Because growing up, when there was hardly any traffic light and there were no traffic cops, people will say, oh, because there are more people now, there are more roads now. You just observe when you drive. You will see where the bottlenecks are.
Yeah.
They are where the traffic lights and the cops are. Because they collect and they try to make cars go this way only without really without utilizing the entire space given. And so lines are created. But if they were to just let it be, sure, maybe there could be traffic locks at the same time, all the controls breed people to be dependent on the controls. And so it dumps down the driver.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you leave it alone, people will, here's the thing people should understand. Chaos is not sustainable. So maybe there could be chaos. There could be maybe a few days. There'll be like heavy, because people are not, if you take out the controls, maybe there will be traffic for a few days, maybe even a week. But if you leave it alone, people will find a way.
Right.
Because you can't live life like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when the human being, the less regulation, the human being becomes smarter.
That's really,
And
really
we'll
interesting.
figure it out. And I must say, I invite you to, when you drive, you always observe.
Yeah.
You always observe where the traffic is. Because from my experience, also when the traffic cop is late, I'm happy. Because it's just always less traffic.
Yeah.
But when the
yeah.
traffic cops are there, and lately where I live, they have added more traffic lights, traffic has gotten considerably heavier.
Right.
So it's like this idea of we keep regulating everything. We keep putting controls. We think we're making it better. And I think people are really well-intentioned. People really do believe that they have to control to make things better. But, it's also like a parent. If you keep controlling your child, controlling, it also can dumb down the child.
Yeah.
At some point, right, you have to, in the US, they call it tough love. At some point, you got to let them be, and they have to fall and get hurt.
Right. Right.
So it's the same principle. We have to rethink this benevolent attitude that we have of, oh, what can we do? But me,
Yeah.
I'm a believer in, you know what? We don't, I'm a believer in focus on what you're good at.
Right.
And if everyone in society just focused at what they were good at, then we'd have less
Mm.
inefficiencies, less interventions.
Mm.
But all the interventions, they kind of multiply our problems and they make them bigger.
So I think what I'm getting from the conversation so far is, I think there's a need to trust in the sort of the natural
Yes, that's
uh,
it. That's
state
it.
of things, rather than more more control, more
Yeah.
regulations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not saying also zero control because
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
do, it's just that we have to, the outlook has to be let's keep it to a minimum. And
Mm.
then don't be too quick to attack a problem. We have to step back a bit and sometimes let things play out.
Yeah.
Because if we're very quick like rabbits to attack it,
Yeah.
we just might be causing more distortions.
Yeah. All right. I think we can now open the floor to questions. I actually have one right now. I think this comes from another perspective, still criticizing the bill, but from another angle. So they're saying this is basically marketing in guise of charity. The CSR bill will legitimize the entry of corporations offering activities for community development, and the local government and government agencies are mandated to assist the corporation's entry into the community anytime and anywhere in the name of CSR. All CSR activities will be tax-free, and the CSR bill clearly stated that it is in the interest of their business. CSR bill will now enter and explore and exploit the community's natural resources, the rape of Mother Earth. The indigenous people will no longer undergo consultation and decision to enter their ancestral domain. Do you want to comment on that, Prof. Caterina?
Um, First, I want to understand the question. Is it talking about foreign corporations or corporations in
I think
general?
in general, even local
In
ones.
general.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, um, I agree that that is what can happen because
Mm.
precisely because there's an elite group that decides,
Mm.
um, and at the same time, government taxpayer money will be because it says here that the government will assist.
Right. Right.
So taxpayer money will be used to help big business. So for me, I'm a believer in supporting the small enterprise. Well, actually, not even support. I wouldn't even say supporting this same enterprise because the small enterprise. Because again, if you support small enterprise, it's the same framework
Mm.
of favoring because it's by application and then the buddy system. Oh, my friend, I'll favor my small enterprise friend. No, it's really about leaving things alone.
Mm.
Like instead of saying, "Oh, we will assist so good things happen," the thinking should be, "Oh, we will intervene less
Mm.
and regulate less so that businesses can find themselves, and we will allow the market to vote them out and cancel them."
Mm. Right.
So, like I said, if you are some bad polluting company, um, word will get out and people will go to another company.
Mm.
I mean, it's like it's respecting the taxpayer. That's how I would say because I'm a taxpayer and I prefer to have a voice versus having an elite group decide for me.
Yeah.
So how will I vote? I will vote with my money.
Yeah.
I will spend it or not spend it on this certain brand. I will support or not support X company.
Mm.
But then if the companies available to me are so few, and why do they become few? The only reason why things are few is because of all the applications for all the regulation, because it's very hard
Mm.
to be, it's very hard for small enterprise. I mean, it's a good thing in the online world, we have a lot of enterprise now. But I can foresee regulation coming in, and when that comes in, they will one by one die.
Yeah.
So I mean, like I said, it's better to just even that concept of polluting Mother Earth and all that.
Mm.
if you're for example, you are I don't know, what company would utilize if you're into mining, for example.
Yeah.
So you're mining. That is your bread and butter. You need to mine.
Mm-hmm.
It is not, as a miner, it is not in your best interest to destroy the environment.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because it's your source of livelihood.
Mm.
You would want the environment to continue to produce
Mm.
because that's where you're taking. Destroying the environment is like killing yourself.
Right.
So it's the same with the loggers, the ones, and I don't know, some wood company maybe.
Mm.
You cut all the trees. It's very easy for us to think, oh, they're so evil. They're just destroying all the trees. No, that's not it. I think what is evil is having an elite group decide, and so only a few businesses, a few corporations have a monopoly on things. If you leave it alone, they will take care of that, because if it's all gone, how will they live?
Right.
What
right.
will they sell?
So the non-negotiable regulation would be controlling monopolies, right?
For me, it's not creating monopolies.
Yeah, not creating monopolies.
Yes. And how do you not create monopolies? Do not give the small ones such a hard time. And not giving assistance.
Right, right.
Because when you're giving assistance, you're taking that from the taxpayer. You know what they should instead do is, make the court system efficient, for example. That's another thing. Like, how can you punish, bad business? Well, how can you when they're so big? You know that it's very hard to take big business into court. Why? Because it's nothing for them.
Yeah.
Because the court system is so slow, it's not friendly to the small guy.
Yeah.
And so they get away with it. Meanwhile, we're doing all these benevolent things, giving them incentives and helping them to gain marketing points via these activities of, we're heroes, we're cleaning the river and we are feeding the poor people here. But that's that's press release. But then if you look underneath, many of them actually don't. I mean, a lot of the small businesses actually, if it would be nice actually, if someone could do a thesis on that. That's an interesting thesis to make, to interview like the small businesses, how they deal with the big corporations, and to see how the system of regulation and control favors the big one.
Yeah.
And that small business should also not make the mistake of asking for assistance. Because when you ask for assistance, you just become the new monopoly. The thinking should be, stop asking for assistance. Start asking to be left alone. Just start asking to just let anyone come in, and businesses should just fight it out, fair and square, without any protectors. That way, everyone will work on their products, on their services, and who wins there? The consumer wins.
So,
and people are afraid of the environment dying. The environment wins too, because the businesses know they need the environment to remain productive.
Right.
Because that's where they get their stuff.
Right. So is this the case in Austria, Prof. Caterina?
This is the perspective of it's called Austrian economics.
Austrian economics.
So if the listeners are curious, I would recommend reading the author Hans Hermann Hoppe. He's got a very good book called Democracy: The God That Failed. If you read that book, it's such a wow book. It will change your perspective.
Right.
A lot of my views come from that. Another one is Murray Rothbard. These are all Austrian economists. But my favorite, the one I would highly recommend, is Democracy: The God That Failed by Hans Hermann Hoppe.
And has Austrian economy followed the recommendations of these?
Oh, well, it's called Austrian economics, but it's not necessarily Austrian.
Not necessarily
like
Austria.
doesn't. Yeah, it's just. It's just the people who began it were meeting in Austria, but it's
I
not.
see. Okay.
Yeah, it's just so because that was the place, but
Right.
it's not. It's
see.
not an Austrian thing. The
I
Austrian
see.
government doesn't necessarily. It's not by the Austrian government.
Right,
Yeah.
right. But there sample countries in the world today that sort of follow the template.
Yeah. Unfortunately, how shall I put it? Um, unfortunately, power is not a fan of small
Right.
government.
For sure.
So by default, something like this is shunned because it's an idea that, if you're placed in power, um, it's not attractive. The idea of small government is not attractive.
That's
Yeah,
really
the other danger is this idea. Some people who will say they support small government, and they will say, will get the private sector involved. But that's also a trap, because just because you're getting the private sector involved doesn't mean you're making government small, because a lot of the times it's there's this saying, you call it, have you ever heard of the revolving doors approach?
what is it? What is it about?
Revolving doors, you know what a revolving
Yeah,
door is,
yeah.
right? It goes like this. So that the regulator and the business, they're the same.
Okay.
The US was the
Yeah.
one actually that championed this. Like the people in government and the people in big business are the same people, and they just like a revolving door.
I
They
see.
rotate.
Yeah, I think I read it in your paper.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So what happens there is, it's decorative again. You're saying, oh, the private sector is help. We're cooperating with the private sector, but that's still an elite group deciding and keeping the economy just for the oligopolies or their favored friends, and the entrepreneur, the medium size. That's really what makes a nation prosperous. Is given a difficult time. So that's why sometimes when we hear things like, wow, you're only paying your laborers that much. I mean, it sounds like it's bad, but a small business cannot afford.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example, like here in the Philippines. I experienced it. I saw this myself with the minimum wage. I think it's like 650, is it now, or 600, something like that.
Yeah.
But so that amounts to what, like 12,000 or
Yeah,
13,000
something like
a
that.
month?
Yeah.
See, but what happens there is, this usually happens especially like in construction companies. You'll have the vagabonds of society who will go to work because, oh, it's so much. But then the quality of their work is really bad. But you're a small company, you have to follow the minimum wage. And then you have your honest workers, your good ones, like maybe your engineer. Obviously, it's not nice for your engineer to get the same as your laborer,
Right.
right? Because the engineer knows more, is more, I mean, has a degree. But then because you're a small company and the government is mandating the minimum wage, you cannot afford to raise your engineer. What happens there is your engineer, who should get higher, is actually subsidizing that worker who, I don't know, sleeps when you're not around, but you have no choice but to give that 12,000. But if there was no minimum wage, if they're not working, you just fire them.
Okay.
And so what happens to to society? Society fixes itself, because vagabonds will die a natural death, because nobody is going to want to hire a vagabond.
Okay.
But what happens to our society is, we're a bit socialist, because we protect. I mean, it sounds nice helping the poor, but what you're doing really there is you're keeping the poor poor because of the mentality. And so there is no incentive, no natural incentive for them to try to make themselves better.
Right.
Oh, I will just sleep on the job. I'll get 12,000. And that actually happens a lot, especially in construction companies.
Wow, this is really interesting insights from Prof. Caterina. We have some time for Prof. Caterina to give us final thoughts, summarizing thoughts on CSR and especially the bill, no? Because I think the overall flow of the discussion is, I think we need to pause and reflect on what this bill really will how this bill will impact society. Again, it sounds nice and all, but is this needed at this point in our history? So maybe final thoughts from you, Prof.
Well, like I'll just summarize and repeat what I said from the start. It's outlook. I
Right.
think we have to have the general outlook of intervening less, allowing market forces to work, not relying on being careful in giving power and authority to the few when there are natural and relying on the natural mechanisms in place. But having said all this, because what happens with this is people will always say there will always be mistakes. There will always be errors, even in the free market.
Yeah.
And then what will happen is if you apply something like this and there's an error, they will say, you see, you were wrong.
Yeah.
You said it would all be perfect. No, 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 no. In fact, we have to put it in our minds, it can never be perfect. Our society can never be perfect. It's really just about reducing imperfections. And by reducing imperfections, I don't mean to actively go and find ways to reduce it. What I mean by reducing imperfections is find ways to reduce our interventions into natural systems. Because precisely, we're all human beings born with the original sin. We are not perfect. And, us human beings, when we try to overpower another human being, we get bossy.
Yeah.
We get bossy, and we have to try to not place ourselves and allow other people to be in such positions of bossing other people, even if they don't intend to, because a lot of the time people don't really intend to.
Yeah.
Oh, there are
sure.
those who do, but there are those who don't, and it happens also because the environment is created to create. Again, I go back to the minimum wage. It sounds really nice to give more, but we don't realize we are creating. It's culture creating, and it doesn't do our society any good. Sorry, I will insert this other example of the Buy Filipino.
Yeah.
It sounds nice. Buy Filipino, support Philippines. It sounds really nice. But, and I will be so unpopular for saying this, my problem with Buy Filipino is if you're going to buy a product just because it's Philippine made, not because of its function, not because of its quality, what do you think that will do to Filipino producers and workers? It's not going to make the worker try to excel. Because our basis for deciding whether we are going to buy, this product or not is because a Filipino made this. Not because, hey, they did a good job. This is nice. It sounds utilitarian, but from a larger perspective, you naturally train the populace to want to become better because they compete. Oh my gosh, my product is not selling. What am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
But if you have all these interventions in place also, good products can not make it. An example is Uber.
Yeah.
I mean, Uber was so good. I loved Uber.
Yeah.
I love Grab also. I like that there was an option. They took out
Yes.
Uber. Now there's only one.
Yeah.
Now that there's only one, the one that is left. I mean, just from a common sense perspective, since they know they're the only ones, are they naturally incentivized to do better? No, because they're the only ones.
Yeah.
But if there are so many and it was getting better before you could even schedule your ride. Now you can't schedule it. It's very hard to call now at
Yes.
peak hours. Again, I guess because they said Uber was bad, Uber was this and that. Let's pretend that was all true. Then if Uber was really bad, then it would have died a natural death.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. I think I'm really getting a lot of insightful thoughts from this conversation. Too bad we don't have a lot of time. Prof. Caterina, thank you so much for your
you.
for your
Thank you.
generosity. I learned a lot from this discussion. This is the end. Dito po nagtatapos ang Baka Naman Pwede. Maraming salamat muli kay Prof. Caterina Lorenzo-Molo ng UANP para sa pagpapaunlak sa aming imbitasyon. Baka naman pwede ninyong i-like ang Institute of Philippine Culture sa Facebook para sa iba pa naming announcement at events. Hanggang sa susunod po, ako si Skilty Labastilla mula sa IPC. Patuloy tayong mag-ingat at laging tandaan, kung may gustong maunawaan, baka naman pwede nating pag-usapan.
Baka naman pwede.
Baka naman pwede.
Baka naman pwede. Mga isyung napapanahon, ating pag-usapan. Baka naman pwede. Gamit ang mga pananaw mula sa iba't ibang kalinangan.
Baka naman pwede.
Mula sa Institute of Philippine Culture, kami inyong samahan. Tayo'y maghuntahan. Dito lang sa
Baka naman pwede.
tuwing Huwebes, alas 3 ng hapon, dito lang sa Radyo Katipunan, 87.9 FM.
3 o'clock prayer. You died, Jesus.